ready? All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Peter Skopek. I'm the director of WISPIRG, the Wisconsin Public Interest Research Group. We are a statewide consumer advocacy organization that stands up to powerful special interests like the rent-to-own industry on behalf of the public interest. We have thousands of members statewide that we represent. And I'm joined here today by a coalition of more than 20 organizations who have our backing on this. Low-income organizations, faith groups, community leaders, consumer advocates, public interest organizations. And our message today is clear. We are here today to urge our legislators to stand up for a transparent and a fair financial marketplace in Wisconsin. We are calling on our state leaders to resist special interest pressure coming from predatory lenders in the rent-to-own industry. And we're here today to call out the rent-to-own industry for once again resorting to last-minute backdoor tactics to weaken crucial consumer protections in Wisconsin and to make our financial marketplace less transparent and less fair for everyone. The rent-to-own industry preys on low-income families. They market deceptively to low-income families and to military families. They seek special treatment from state legislatures in order to make their predatory business model work. We've seen these tactics in Wisconsin in the past, and we're seeing them again now. Predatory lenders are trying to sneak anti-transparency provisions into our state budget that would exempt the rent-to-own industry from Wisconsin consumer protections and strip the market of most basic transparency. So there should be no misunderstanding about these rent-to-own exemptions. They're not designed to protect consumers, and they're not designed to allow the rent-to-own industry to operate here in Wisconsin. The rent-to-own industry already does operate here in Wisconsin and already can. This is about a special interest group seeking unfair special treatment. Rent-to-own transactions are high-interest loans. Consumers make weekly or monthly payments to immediately take home a product, things like televisions, laptops, consumer electronics, or major appliances. And rent-to-own customers have the option of owning the merchandise outright after a required number of payments, but they come with astronomical interest rates. A 2013 WISPIRG survey found that rent-to-own businesses routinely charge customers 1.5 to 12 times what a cash customer would pay at regular retail. In other words, a rent-to-own customer will pay between $1,000 and $2,400 for a product that in regular retail would cost as little as $200 used or $600 new. And that's why it's so important that the Wisconsin Consumer Act requires rent-to-own businesses to disclose these interest rates. It's a matter of basic transparency and of basic fairness in our financial marketplace. The industry wants to be exempt from the Wisconsin Consumer Act so that rent-to-own businesses can leave their astronomical interest rates hidden, like they do in other states. That's how the business model works, and that's what they're seeking to do here in Wisconsin as well. And that's also how rent-to-own businesses trap consumers in a cycle of high-cost perpetual debt by hiding the astronomical interest rates that come with rent-to-own products. So make no mistake, these special interest carve-outs would make the financial marketplace less transparent and less fair for consumers in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's laws provide us with important protections from predatory financial practices, and the rent-to-own industry deserves no exception here. This is an issue that unites faith groups, the legal aid community, low-income advocates, consumer advocates, and public interest organizations, as you can see here today. This is an important issue, and we're standing here today to call on the legislature to resist the rent-to-own industry's special interest tactics. Do the right thing and keep our financial marketplace transparent and fair for everyone in Wisconsin. I'll pass it next to Carol Terrell with the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin.
Thank you, Peter. I'm Carol Terrell, a longtime League member and representing the Legislative Committee of the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin. Today, we are faced with a situation that is poisoning our democracy. Special interest lobbyists for the rent-to-own industry are working hard, out of the public eye, and without the knowledge of most of the majority of our legislators or the media. They are secretly working for provisions to be slipped into the budget by legislators holding key leadership positions. After failing in past legislative sessions to enact laws that would weaken, water down Wisconsin consumer protections in rent-to-own transactions, this industry is attempting to win backdoor changes through the budget process. There is nothing in writing from these lobbyists. There is no opportunity for anyone to evaluate, review, or comment on their proposals. There are no public hearings, but they will be slipped into the largest bill that comes before any legislature, the state budget. Furthermore, these type measures are not fiscal matters at all. They are very significant policy matters. These measures impact the lives, well-being, and financial circumstances of many Wisconsin residents. These measures have no place in the state budget. The League of Women Voters believes that democracy, democratic government, depends upon the informed and active participation of citizens at all levels of government. The League further believes that governmental bodies must protect the citizens' right to know by giving adequate notice of proposed actions, holding open meetings, and making public records accessible. Democracy is not well informed when there is no opportunity to read and review written proposals and to comment on new legislative proposals before actions are taken. Democracy is not transparent if special interests can sneak public policy into a massive budget document. Democracy is not accountable if the media, the public, and other legislators do not know which legislators approve putting these changes into the budget document. Democracy is undermined if the well-defined process for considering and acting on changes to the laws of the state of Wisconsin are ignored. Democracy is poisoned by secrecy in policymaking. At Gettysburg, President Abraham Lincoln praised our government as of the people, by the people, and for the people. Secretive legislation is government of the lobbyists, by one political party, and for one special interest industry. The League of Women Voters urges the legislative leaders of the state budget process to reject such non-fiscal policy measures which deserve more public input than they will ever have when included in the state budget. Thank you very much.
Ralph Middlecamp with Society of St. Vincent de Paul.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to maybe just put some perspective on the people who are impacted by a change and the people who have protection now that they didn't have in the past. And as other speakers have said, the real issue is transparency. It's not questioning the legitimacy or the fact that people have a right to have this business, but the people that use these types of businesses should have the same rights of protection of transparency as you and I have when we get a car loan or when we take out a mortgage in our house. We know what it will cost us over the term of that loan. Let me just put an illustration of the kinds of folks that we've seen at the Society of St. Vincent de Paul throughout the state of Wisconsin. I just came from a meeting at which we had people from Green Bay, Milwaukee, Marshfield, Appleton, and we discussed this meeting this morning and all had similar stories. Stories of people who have been homeless, maybe sleeping on relatives' couches, maybe for the first time having their own apartment coming out of a homeless shelter, and they rented an apartment anywhere from $600 to $1,200 a month, and there's nothing in that apartment but a stove and refrigerator. There might not even be lights in the bedrooms because they're wall-switched outlets. They're there with their children, no table to eat on, maybe not even pots and pans. Their children are sleeping on the floor in their coats, and so they start looking for what to do. Hopefully one of the things they do is find agencies, like some of the nonprofit and faith communities, that can help them with furniture. Here in Madison, the Society of St. Vincent de Paul visits 10 to 25 such families every weekend. We buy mattresses for them. We give them used product off our floor. We send visitors, volunteers, in pairs to talk to them, to find out their needs. And a lot of times those visitors come back and say, well, yes, the kids are sleeping on the floor, but they've got a color TV. They have a nice living room set. Why are we giving them? And you have to instruct those volunteers that those were rent to own. and they probably won't be there if we revisit them in another 4 or 5 months. They will have paid maybe several $1,000s and come away with nothing but a bad credit rating, which will follow them in the future and maybe even impact their ability to get the next apartment that they need, may impact them on a job application, may impact them on their ability to get the car they need to take a job. That will follow them, because this really is a loan. They've shopped other places for furniture, and they can't afford a sofa or a TV for hundreds of dollars, but the offer looks pretty attractive to take it home today for several $100s. And most people, myself included, don't bring a calculator when we go to do such things. And so you can read the terms, and we can criticize for people for not being informed. But which of us, when we took out our home mortgage, really understood how much interest it would be till the banker showed us the sheet? And then we make an informed decision, right, about whether we do that or not. That's not available if these are stripped out. Anecdotally, we see less of these situations with the big TV and the rented furniture than we did several years ago when the current protections were not in place. We don't want to go back to that situation again, where it preys on people who really are trying to make a home for them and their children. And they're very proud of the furniture they have, but it's difficult to have the conversation with them that this is not a good budget decision, and it's probably not a decision that they would have made if they really had the opportunity to look at the facts. That's what we're asking, that transparency remains in Wisconsin.
Thank you. And we'll be happy to take questions now if anyone has questions.
So how long has the transparency protections been in place in Wisconsin?
They are part of the Wisconsin Consumer Act. I'm not sure exactly when those were put in place, if anyone...
In the 1970s?
In the 1970s, all right.
And there was a court decision, my understanding is, that said that these kind of... The Consumer Protection Act, go back to the 70s, it actually was a judicial court ruling that indicated that the rent-to-own industry also had to follow these same consumer protection laws.
Now, Peter, did I hear you right, that rent-to-own is already operating in Wisconsin, so these disclosures are not preventing them from operating?
Exactly, that's exactly right. So the rent-to-own industry is already in Wisconsin. They're not prohibited from operating here. The only thing that the Wisconsin Consumer Act does is it requires them to disclose the interest rates on their products. Again, the way that the rent-to-own industry works is by charging astronomical interest rates on the products that they rent out to people for ownership in the end. And their business model is to not disclose that. So in many other states, they do not have to disclose the interest rates, which is terrible for transparency. And Wisconsin has these important protections, and we want to make sure that they stay in place.
So your concern is they may proliferate if this disclosure were not required? I mean, how extensive is rent-to-own right now in Wisconsin? I don't know.
It's not as large an industry as it is in other places because they have to disclose what the interest rates are on their products. So we're concerned that if these important transparency measures are taken out of the Wisconsin Consumer Act through the budget process, again through a really backdoor process that shouldn't be happening the way it is without any kind of public input, transparency will come out of the market, and it will make it easier for these predatory lenders to prey on the populations that they prey on in other states, which is primarily low-income communities, military families, etc.
Have you seen language that's being considered?
We're hearing that the rent-to-own industry is pushing for this once again through the budget process. They've done this in past years, and they're, as far as we're hearing, they're doing the same thing again.
Before you've had legislative allies, Glenn Grothman, for instance, do you have a legislative ally right now, and how big of a concern is that you don't have someone in there?
Well, we don't have the same kind of champions that we had last time around, which is certainly a concern. Glenn Grothman was a strong ally on this and pushed very hard against rent-to-own provisions, and we haven't seen the same kind of leadership on this time around.
Are there changes besides the disclosure requirement that you're concerned with given?
So that's the primary one. Again, part of what makes this so difficult is that we don't know exactly what's happening behind closed doors. There's no disclosure around what is happening and what's being snuck into the budget process. We know that this is what the rent-to-own industry has sought in the past because, again, they thrive on being intransparent on these things. And so we're concerned that they're pushing exactly the same thing again, and that's certainly what we've been hearing too.
So if we accept the the assertion that this is actually a loan. Just to clarify, I mean, there isn't any other sector of the consumer loan industry where they're not required to disclose interest rates.
Not as far as I know. So maybe there's someone from the legal community who has more to say on this. But as Ralph mentioned, a court upheld the fact that rent-to-own products and rent-to-own transactions are credit transactions. So they are high-interest loans, and they should be regulated as such. And that's what the industry is seeking to get exemption from. Are there any other questions, or anyone else who would like to add anything?
I would just reiterate anecdotally that since that has happened, we have, when we do the visits, 10 to 30 a week, it's less frequent that we see these items in the homes of people who have nothing else. And we see in Madison there are fewer such places than there were 10 years ago, for instance. So it has made some impact, and we have no problem if people make intelligent, informed decision, if this is the right decision for them, and there probably are some reasons why this will serve a segment of the population well, and they have a right to do that. It's just we need to make sure that it's transparent, and the people who are signing things that commit them for sometimes 3-4 years for an item make that knowing what the terms are and how much they will end up paying for that item.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone.